BuyTwoWayRadios.com. Check, check. BuyTwoWayRadios.com.
It's the Two-Way Radio Show.
And welcome to the Two-Way Radio Show. I'm Rick Savoya.
And I'm Danny Feemster.
And this is the podcast about two-way radios for business and consumer communications. Today we discuss the new Pennsylvania law that bans the use of handheld mobile radios and how it may affect two-way radio operators across various services. We'll also take some of your questions from our blog, YouTube channel, and forum at twowayradioforum.com. Our show is sponsored by BuyTwoWayRadios.com, the source of two-way radios and radio accessories for businesses and consumers since 2002. BuyTwoWayRadios.com, your radio specialists. On June 5th, 2025, Pennsylvania enacted Paul Miller's Law. This new law bans the use of handheld mobile devices in a vehicle, even when the vehicle is stationary. While many other states have hands-free laws, this one seems to be a little more concerning to mobile radio operators because it allows an exception for only one radio service and not the others. How will it affect the use of business, CB, GMRS, and merged mobile radio communications? Could this bring about the eventual end to on- and off-road mobile two-way radios for those services as we know it?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, Rick. Let me make sure you've looked into this law a lot more than I have. Let me make sure I understand what's happening here. I guess the point of this is that they're trying to eliminate texting while driving.
That's correct.
Is that the main goal? But they're also eliminating talking on the phone while driving, like holding the phone in your hand up to your ear, talking to someone with an audio conversation. That's something I would normally think would be okay. But they're making that illegal as well, essentially.
Right. And this is a law that's, I guess, has been in the works for a while. And it just now became law. And this was based, and just to give a little background on this, the law was named after Paul Miller Jr., actually, who was killed in 2010. Quite tragically, by a distracted driver. Apparently, the driver was reaching for his cell phone, and I guess he was distracted. And this kind of really pushed a lot of buttons here because it's one more person who was killed from distracted driving. And you really, there have been, I guess, according to CBS News, I was on their website a while ago, and according to them, over 11,000 distracted driving crashes in Pennsylvania occurred in 2023. That's a lot. And, for good reason, they needed to enact a law about it. Now, I am totally for eliminating cell phone use like that in your hands and texting and driving. It's something that's been very, very concerning to me for a long, long time. When I'm driving to work in Rock Hill on the highway every day, I often see people, looking at their cell phones instead of driving. They're driving 60, 70 miles an hour down the highway, and they're either looking at their phones or they're actively texting on their phones. That's a real problem. And so I certainly understand the law. The question is, how far do we take this?
Yeah, it seems like they've taken it to an extreme. If you're even eliminating voice phone calls where you're holding the phone. I mean, you can kind of pay attention to where you're going while you're holding the phone up to your ear and driving. I mean, I've done that a million times, and it doesn't seem quite as dangerous as like texting, where you're literally looking away from the road, taking your eyes off of the road, looking at a phone. That seems crazy. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I do question. Like, I wonder if you said 11,000 accidents
Over
related to this.
11,000, yeah.
I wonder, though, if the law is going to make that much of a difference. I mean, it seems like everybody that texts while they're driving already are aware that they shouldn't be texting while they're driving. Is it going to make a difference if there's a law
Well, that's a good
out there for
point.
this?
That's a really good point, Danny, because I'm not sure. I'm not that confident that just having a law in the books, even if it is somewhat enforced, is going to eliminate that entirely, because there's going to be a subset of people that get into the road and they're so addicted to their phones that for them, being on the phone is first and driving is second, or maybe third.
Right. The law kind of targets people with poor judgment anyway. So you're saying,
Yeah.
are people with poor judgment going to follow this law? I don't know.
Mhm.
But I do agree that you need a way to enforce it. Like if a police officer drives up beside a car on a 4-lane road and sees someone texting, they need a law on the books in order to be able to give that person a ticket. And I would support that. Now, it
Sure.
doesn't seem like it should extend to voice calls. I would quarrel with that maybe, and certainly radios. I mean, police officers themselves are using radios.
Mhm.
And from what you're
Sure.
telling me, this only carves out an exception for amateur
Mhm.
radio. So are police officers violating the law when they, radio in a license plate?
I believe that the police officers are exempt. Now, looking at the law here, and just briefly, I'm not going to read every bit of it, but just briefly, here's an overview. The law defines an interactive mobile device as a handheld wireless telephone, personal digital assistant, smartphone, portable or mobile computer, or a similar device that can be used for voice communication, texting, emailing, browsing the internet, instant messaging, playing games, that sort of thing. And it defines the use of an interactive mobile device as at least one hand to hold or supporting with another part of the body. So if you're dialing or answering an interactive mobile device by pressing more than a single button, or reaching for an interactive mobile device that requires a driver to maneuver so that the driver is no longer in a seated driving position, restrained by a seatbelt, that sort of thing. That's how they defined that. And to me, I think that it sounds like that would sort of let off the option of just grabbing. I mean, if you have it right in your hand and nearby, just grabbing a handheld speaker mic, and just talking in it. You can do that without taking your eyes off the road, can't you?
Oh, you can, but can't you also do the same thing by answering a call on your cell phone?
Well, technically, it kind of depends, because if you're grabbing your cell phone and you're doing this with it, and you're having to look down to hit the right button, the correct button, and I know some of those buttons, they're all on the phone most of the time.
If I'm holding a phone to my ear, that's sort of the same as holding a mic in front of my mouth.
Well, not necessarily if you're having to do this. And I think that's what they're talking about. If you're you're reaching for the phone.
You're reaching.
They're reaching for the phone. But but to me, if you're holding the phone in one hand, or if you're putting it against your shoulder because you have to have both hands on the wheel or something, yeah. I mean, I know of situations where people would like put it on their shoulder and they're trying to talk, and it would slip off their shoulder, and then they're grabbing for it or something. And that definitely is a dangerous thing to do. No doubt.
Well, I mean, there's so many things. If you're going to go down this road, you should outlaw eating fast food while you're driving. There's so many things you can do while you're driving that something could happen that cause you to look away for a second. If we're headed down this path, then where does it end?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, eating while driving, I'll have to say I've done it. I've had to eat while driving a little bit. Sometimes you're on the highway and you're trying to get somewhere. Yeah, that happens. And that's not the safest thing in the world either, to be honest. I try not to do that very often anymore. Trying to do it at all. But drinking.
I
drink
really
coffee
don't feel like it. I
or
don't think
water.
that eating while driving takes your attention away the same way sending a text message. Sending a text message takes time. It
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
30 seconds maybe, and you're having to look down at your phone for a long period of time. If you're grabbing a French fry out of a bag, I mean, turning your head for a second is a little different than typing a message to your wife on your phone.
No, that's true. However, the old rule of thumb that when you're going down the highway at 60 to 70 miles an hour, you're traveling how many feet per second? And so they're saying that if you take your eyes off the road for a total of 5 seconds, or maybe just a little bit less than that, you've traveled almost the length of an entire football field. A lot of things can happen in 5 seconds, especially when you're on a very busy highway.
Yes, of course, Rick. I'm not saying that being distracted is good I'm not defending being distracted while driving at all. I'm simply saying that there's a big difference between writing a text message and eating a French fry or eating fast food or something while you're driving down the highway. I think there's a huge, and I think that the stats probably show this. I think that like the numbers Pennsylvania is putting out, since we've had text messaging become such a big part of our culture, the number of accidents have gone up tremendously because of that.
Yeah.
We didn't have this huge problem from people having McDonald's while they were driving. We've had a huge problem since smartphones came along and everyone started texting.
That's a good point. That's a valid point. Before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about the penalties for violating this new law. Now, they've given a little bit of a grace period, as I understand. Now this law is in effect, and on a primary offense, that's what I'm reading here now. On a primary offense, drivers can be stopped by police if they have a mobile device in their hand while driving. For the first 12 months, for the first year, the penalty is a written warning. Effective June 5th, 2026, that's a year from when the law first went into effect, the penalty is a summary offense with a $50 fine plus court costs and other fees. Now, $50 may not seem like that much, but when you get to the court costs and whatever these other fees are, because they don't really specify what those other fees are, that could get expensive pretty quick. And if a driver is convicted of homicide by vehicle and driving while distracted, they may be sentenced up to an additional 5 years in prison. That's on top of whatever sentence is applied for the homicide by vehicle offense. As of June 2025, there are 31 states that have some type of hands-free law. So this is not unique to Pennsylvania. This is not unique to the state. However, this one, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, this one's a little bit, I think, heavier-handed than some of the others, because at least for some of the other states, they do allow the use of hand mics, and they make exceptions for CB radio and GMRS and that sort of thing. But Pennsylvania doesn't do that here. The law doesn't specifically exempt them from that, which means that they are potentially part of the violations.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. So this law has kind of come into our sphere because the ARRL lobbied to get ham radio exempted from this.
Right.
But as I understand it, there seems to be some outrage because ham radio is the only service that's exempted. Is that correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, this law was about to, I guess, be signed and sealed and delivered, so to speak, without the ham exception in place, although the ARRL got wind of it and stepped in and lobbied very heavily to have the ham radio, specifically ham radio, added into the law as an exception. So that exception is there, but it's just for ham radio. And that doesn't specifically include any other service than that. I mean, CB isn't mentioned, GMRS, MERS, because there are some MERS mobiles, and we sell a MERS mobile. That's
It is sort of implied, though, right? Like,
well, not
do
really,
you
not
think
really.
do you think a police officer would go, wait a minute, is that a GMRS radio you're using? I'm giving you a ticket. Ham, that's fine. GMRS, here you go, buddy, $50.
Well, the
I
thing
don't
is, how
know
is a
that.
cop going to know that radio in there is not a ham radio, but it's GMRS or CB? A lot of them will probably assume that it's a CB radio, and CB generally, apparently, from what I understand with this, CB is not exempt from this law. If you're driving while you're using a mounted amateur radio mic safely, that's clearly exempt. Everything else is not. I have heard from people that said, "Well, if I have an amateur and a GMRS license, even if it's a GMRS radio, and because a lot of people are, they have multiple licenses. If I do, as long as I keep my ham license with me and can show it to the officer, then that should probably be okay, because he'll just assume that that's a ham radio, because a lot of them may not know the difference. But I don't think you can really count on that."
I think that the amateur radio exemption is going to have the effect of exempting all two-way radios and CB radios from this law. I would bet that no one is ever prosecuted for using a radio with this law. And I would also say that maybe people are getting worked up for no reason about this law being some kind of major problem, because I really don't see a police officer getting down into what frequencies are you transmitting on. And they don't know what amateur radio is. They don't know what GMRS radio is. They're just here to keep people from texting while driving.
Well,
The law specifically says amateur radio is allowed, and they're using a radio themselves in their vehicle. So I don't think they're going after radio
the police and
operators.
emergency, as I understand from this new law, the police and other emergency responders are exempt from the law. As you said, everyone else not necessarily, and this is a concern that again, there is no explicit exemption for GMRS, MERS, CB, or business radios. So if you're using a CB radio, if you have a CB radio in your semi, in your truck, apparently that's a potential violation if you're using a handheld microphone with that. So I mean, if you've got a GMRS microphone or a CB mic on the passenger seat, and you're sitting at a red light, because according to the law, the vehicle doesn't have to be in motion. It can be just as long as if the vehicle is on, it's sitting at a red light, the vehicle's running, and you start picking it up and start talking on it, that's a potential violation of the law, which I think takes it too extreme, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. That takes it to the extreme, and that's way too far. And there should be more carve out. The carve out should specifically probably be radio, like two-way radio, instead of limited to just amateur radio in the text of the law. But I still don't think that anyone is going to get a ticket for this, for talking on their CB radio. I think that's I think you've read this law a lot more than even the police officers that are going to be enforcing it probably have read it. I think that the police officers were probably told, okay, let's go after people who are texting while driving now, or using their phone in, a way that's, going to take their focus away or cause distraction. Let's go after these people and give them a ticket. I don't think they're going after. I mean, I guess they can't. Technically, the law allows you to go after someone who's using a CB, whereas it doesn't go after someone or allow you to go after someone who's using an amateur radio. But would that ever happen? I mean, you think about the course of event. Like a cop will go up to a car and say, "Is that a CB? Is that an amateur radio you're using, sir?" No, CB. Oh, $50. Here you go. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what state you're in too, because as I said before, there are 31 states now.
Let's
Now
talk
with
specifically about
Pennsylvania
Pennsylvania
that
and
have them.
this Paul Miller law.
Okay, so yeah, talking about that, Pennsylvania, I've driven through Pennsylvania quite a bit. And in my lifetime, I've driven through it. And although there are some cities there are also a lot of rural areas. And in those rural areas, there are a lot of folks who rely on mobile radios um, to um, to communicate back and forth on the road. And the thing is about Pennsylvania, there are some towns, some boroughs, things like that, where some of them, the laws are not super strictly enforced, but then there are others where they are really, really strict about it. And, you've heard the stories about the Texas cop hiding behind the road sign that's just waiting to catch anybody going over 2 miles an hour over the speed limit. They're really, ready to throw the book at you sort of thing. They exist in Pennsylvania too. You got to be. There are some places where you kind of have to be careful where you're driving in Pennsylvania. You have to kind of know where they are, because there are some places there where they have quotas on writing tickets for various things, mostly speeding, but other violations too. And they got to keep their quotas. They got to make their quotas, and you can get stopped for just about anything. If you look at a cop funny sometimes. So, and that's what I've heard, but I haven't been stopped myself, but I've heard stories of a lot of people who have. And I know someone who's a retired cop, and he used to tell me all kinds of stories about this sort of thing as a cop. And, that you just got to be careful. And so, when you never know as far as enforcement is concerned. So do you really want to err on the side of caution, or do you want to just kind of say, well,
Well,
maybe I'll get stopped, maybe I won't?
Maybe the effect, I really don't think anyone's getting a ticket for this. And I think that in the case you lay out where you've got maybe a cop with bad intentions, or maybe a cop that's trying to just find a reason to write a ticket, or maybe you looked at him wrong, or he perceived you looked at him wrong and he's looking for a reason to get you. In that case, he can find something other than that. There's so many laws on the books. They can find a reason if they really want to get you for something. And it's probably going to be more than a $50 ticket for what they pick. Here's who I'm afraid this hurts is the people that are really law abiding and really want to go by the letter of the law. And if the intent of this law is not to outlaw using radio in general, the effect of it is that it does outlaw radio in your vehicle. So if you are a law abiding citizen that wants to do everything by the letter of the law, now maybe you're not going to buy a GMRS radio. Maybe you're not going to buy a CB radio because the law says you're not allowed to use it in your vehicle. So I want to make sure I'm following the law. Even though there's no reasonable chance you're ever going to get a ticket for this, it may stop some people from joining the hobby that wouldn't have, or that would have otherwise.
I think you're absolutely correct about that. They're going to be, now that this law is in place, there are people in Pennsylvania, maybe in certain other parts of the country, because, when a law is enacted in one place, there's kind of a domino effect for that sort of thing. And, people start thinking about it, and they're thinking, do I really want to risk it and put a mobile radio in my car? And do I need it that bad? I think you're absolutely correct on that. I think this could definitely hurt sales of mobile radios, particularly particularly CB and GMRS radios. I think those are the two services where I think it's going to have the biggest impact. And maybe some business radios too.
I don't think businesses are going to be too concerned about it, but I think that GMRS customers, CB customers, maybe that pushes some of them to get an amateur license instead.
Maybe.
I don't think we'll see a huge impact, but maybe some people would avoid it, whereas they wouldn't before.
Well, here's a question for you. if because I'm sure someone's going to ask, well, how are they going to know that you've got a radio in the car and you're talking on the radio to stop you? If they don't see you doing it. Well, the fact is that if you've got a big old antenna on top of your car, they're going to be looking at you a little bit more closely, I think. Don't you? Wouldn't you say so?
I don't think so. I don't think they're
so?
looking for radio users with this law at all. I think that it is completely blown out of proportion. That they're trying to stop people from using radios with it. I don't think that's the intent at all. I think the intent with this law is 100% cell phones, and radio is just simply something they overlooked with this law. It's not something that they're looking to stop people from using. The fact that they added amateur radio at the last minute without a thought tells me that somebody brought it up to their attention at the very last minute, and they said, "Oh, we don't want to stop that. Let's throw that in there."
Not like Virginia does with radar detectors.
Well, radar detectors are explicitly prohibited in Virginia.
Yes,
it's not like this, where at the last second they're trying to create a law for cell phones, and they didn't even think that two-way radios existed. There's a specific law for radar detectors. I think that's very different.
You know what I think could happen from this? Because laws can be amended and changed, and if there is enough of an issue, this becomes a very serious issue for C-beam, business radios, and GMRS radios, MRS, whatever. There could be enough of a backlash to say, hey, maybe we need to amend the law. So there's
You really think they're going to
there.
stop people? You really think they're going to stop people and give people tickets for using GMRS radios in their car?
I don't know, but time will tell. I think it's just a matter of time and what happens over time as to whether or not there might be another amendment or two to this law beyond what the ARRL did with ham radios. I will say this, though. This definitely covers, up to this point, we've been talking about how it affects on-road operations. But what about off-roaders? How will this affect off-road enthusiasts in Pennsylvania?
We talked about this briefly before we started recording, and I did a little research. And supposedly, regular highway laws don't apply off-road, other than when they're specifically posted, and things like DUI laws and that type of thing. So I think that this doesn't impact off-roaders at all, based on my expert opinion with the help of ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily subscribe to everything ChatGPT says, but because it's been known to be wrong as well. But there are two things here. We're talking about federal lands. We're talking about state-owned lands, like state parks and things like that. Does the law extend to those state park trails? Now, maybe not. I don't know. But if it's a private trail, on private property, I can see where that would be a definite that shouldn't be an issue. But a public access trail, that might be a different story.
Well, I'm obviously not an expert. I don't think either one of us are. We're just speculating here on the trails and the off-road. I wouldn't think that it would apply. And based on our AI overlords, they also say that it probably will not apply from what I understand. But I would suggest people look that up on their own if they're concerned about this, and if they're really afraid they're going to get a ticket for a radio, which I don't think it's going to happen.
Well, I have heard, this is what I've heard, that, if it's a private trail on your private property, that's not really an issue. But if it's a public access trail, particularly on a state-owned property, like a state park or something, that may be treated as a regular road use. So I don't know for sure, but it's probably a good idea to check on that before traveling those roads with a radio.
If you're that worried about it, yeah.
Yeah, if you're that worried.
I don't think they're going after radio, guys.
Well, having said that, all is not lost here, because there are some options. We're talking about a law that requires hands-free use. And having said that, there are not a whole lot of hands-free use options for radios at this point, but there are some. There are some generally using Bluetooth, and we have a few by TWRS.com. There are a few options for utilizing Bluetooth or wireless devices with your radio, depending on the radio, the make and model that you have, and what you have, what you need to communicate with as far as the accessory. But one item that we have here is a Bluetooth ring push to talk, and that's specifically for the VGC VRN 7500 two-way radio. This is something that you strap onto your steering wheel, and you just press the button when you want to push to talk, and it can, you can do that wirelessly and remotely. And we've had that for a while, and I don't think we've had any issues with that, have we, Danny?
No, the VGC VRN 7500 works really well with Bluetooth. We've actually had a lot of positive feedback on that radio with its Bluetooth support. It's kind of built around Bluetooth and hands-free use, and there's wireless speaker mics for it, things like that.
And you and I did a video on that way back when it first came out. You can see that video at bytowrradios.com. Another item we have is an Wouxun Bluetooth speaker mic that has a Bluetooth adapter that plugs into the speaker jack into the KG1000G and the 1000M and the 980p radios. Now, the question is, will that work with other Bluetooth devices? I don't know. We haven't really tested it. The microphone, the speaker mic, obviously is what it connects to. But if you can't use the speaker mic, that adapter, that Bluetooth adapter is a possible solution. Like I said, we'd probably have to look into that. We'll probably have to have our techs look into that.
There's also an Wouxun Bluetooth adapter for handheld radios. Yeah. And there are some headsets for the Wouxun radios that have built-in Bluetooth, like the KGS88G Plus. So there are a few options. You're right. Yeah, there's some CB mics as well, I believe. Bluetooth mics. Maybe Cobra makes one.
Mm-hmm. Well, President also makes a remote Bluetooth device. This is another one, just sort of like the VRN 7500 ring push to talk that you strap on your steering wheel. President also has a device like that straps to your steering wheel, and this is a microphone. It's the microphone's right there on the steering wheel with the Bluetooth push to talk, and that's for the 6-pin CB radios. So you're talking about any of the 6-pin President radios, which I think they've upgraded a lot of those so that most of them are 6-pin now, but that will work with the ham radios and the CB radios. So that's an option that you can put those on. And we also, Tommy made a video demonstrating how that works a little while back when we first got those. And that works pretty well. So there's an option there. So there are options.
For those that are truly concerned, there are options.
Yeah. And we may have more coming out soon. We'll just, we're always on the lookout for other Bluetooth devices that will work with the radios. So, and we'll keep everyone apprised as they come along. Any other comments on the new law?
I don't have any comments on the new law in Pennsylvania. I do want to mention we have had a lot of inquiries on the KG XS20H.
Yeah.
Tri-band mobile radio.
So it's time for a backorder update.
Yes. Due to tariffs, right after that radio was launched, we ran out of stock, and it was a while before we got more. I just want to let everyone know that we're now restocked on the KG XS20H. So if you've been waiting to order one of those, now will be a good time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Also, just to mention, we have a few deals and specials before we get into the Q&A. I want to mention that just briefly. Just for the month of June 2025, if you're listening to this during June, we have an upgrade for the 805G, our popular 805G handheld GMRS radio. And it's one of our most popular radios, actually, still.
And people are going to love this upgrade.
Oh, yeah. We now include the USB-C battery that Ocean now makes for. That's a 2600 milliamp battery. So it now includes that USB-C battery in the box. So you've got an automatic upgrade. However, for the month of June, we're doing 10% off on the 805G with the USB-C battery upgrade. So that takes it down to normally it's $79.99, and I think now it's $71.99, and that's just for the month of June. We also have
with this upgrade. Let me recap. You get a larger battery than ever before on the 805G. It went from 1,700 milliamps to 2,600 milliamps. You get the USB-C charger built in. However, we removed the drop-in charger from the package. You no longer get the drop-in charger. But at $71.99 on sale, this is the lowest price this radio has ever been. So get it while it's still here. That price will go back up.
And we have a sale going on the KG 905G. Right now, the 905G, which is another very, very popular GMRS handheld radio, it's 10% off right now. You can get it for $89.99 while the supply lasts. Now, this doesn't end June 30th per se, unless we run out of radios by then. But while we have the supply of these 905Gs, you can get it for $89.99. The same thing can be said for the TYT MD380. We have the original MD380 radios, both the VHF version and the UHF versions of those radios are on sale for $99.99. So if you want to get into digital, that's a great first radio to start off with to get into digital. So we got some sales going on. Well, we have some comments and questions from our blog, YouTube channel, and our forum at twowayradioforum.com. Our first one comes from Jason. Jason is commenting on the tariffs, the U.S.-China tariffs on two-way radios, and we covered this in episode 202. That was the last episode of the Two-Way Radio Show. Jason says, well, when everyone stops buying from them, the prices will drop. I had the same argument today with Common Antennas. I was going to place an order for my shop, and I told them that I will not order from them anymore if they are going to play this game. And that's from Jason. And I guess he's referring to the tariffs overall. This one is from Christopher. Christopher wants to know, does the present 55% tariff mean a total price increase of 55% or in an increase in taxes? And that's from Christopher. Danny, you can probably better answer that one.
No, what it means is that when we buy products from China, or when we buy products indirectly that came from China, whoever imported those products initially had to pay a tariff of 55% on the cost, on the wholesale cost of the item. So, for example, if there's a radio that cost us $100 and we buy it from the manufacturer in China, we would have to pay $55. Our cost essentially goes from $100 to $155 on that item.
Okay. This one is a comment from our YouTube channel on episode 202. This one is from Mike in Georgia 1. And he says, I grew up in Pittsburgh, the heart of America's industrial revolution. The infrastructure around there is absolutely incredible. There's more infrastructure there that is no longer in use than most parts of the country have ever even had. But it only exists because the products were being manufactured here. I have an old pack of paper clips that was made in Pittsburgh. I'd love to know how much money they saved by moving their facility to China. Their assets should be seized and auctioned off to someone that contractually agrees to continue manufacturing here. And that's from Mike in Georgia 1. I've seen some of that too. I've seen a lot of photos of that too, abandoned factories and things like that are just sitting there rotting away.
I mean, there's so much that used to be made in the United States that moved overseas. And I don't think they're doing it because it's more expensive. I think that somebody's making more money on outsourced manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
certainly harder to ship and things like that from further away. So, unfortunately, there's just so much basic infrastructure now that's moved out. So even if you wanted to move manufacturing back here, it's not like you can just make what your final product is.
Yeah, we talked about that in the show the last episode, and just how easier said than done it is to get manufacturing back here. All right, well, our next one comes from Sean, our good friend Sean in the forum. And Sean says, I listened to episode 202 yesterday. I'm not a business person. I remember how tariffs affected us in the power industry from not just China, but many other countries. I don't envy you guys and hope for the best for your business. It will be interesting to see what the world is like by this time next year. I was one of the lucky folks that snagged one of the KG XS20H radios you had in stock. Great little radio. I mounted it in my old Toyota FJ. I will continue to use the G version on trips in my wife's vehicle. I didn't need a new radio, but, and that's from Sean.
Awesome, Sean. Sean, good to hear from you.
All right, and our last one comes from Zap P25, and Zap P25 says, I am still very much listening to the episode, and while I may take a year-plus hiatus from the forums, doesn't mean I don't still listen, but let me bring something up from a different point of view. Of the roughly 1,900 APX series radios I currently have deployed, almost every single one of them was made in Malaysia. In fact, even the new APX Next we are getting are made in Malaysia and sell for over $10,000 each. It really makes me wonder how tariffs are going to affect everyone. Of course, the federal users will likely be exempt from some things, but what about the rest of the public safety users who purchase radios using tax funds? Think about it. There probably isn't more than 100,000 federal radio users out there, but the number of state, county, local users out there is closer to the millions range. And that's from Zap P25.
Well, I can tell Zap P25 that they're going to be paying more for those radios that he's talking about. Motorola had a price increase. We were notified over the last 2 weeks that there's basically an across-the-board Motorola price increase on business and commercial series radios. I don't know about some of the super high-tier government products because we don't sell those, but at least the business and commercial radios that we sell, there have been price increases, and those are already in effect. And that's our price went up, and Motorola asked that the retail price go up as well. So that's already happened.
All right, well, I guess it does it for our comments and questions in this episode. Send in your comments and questions for Danny or myself to show@bytwowayradios.com. If you want to know more about today's topic or about two-way radios in general, check out our forum discussions at twowayradioforum.com. You can subscribe to the Two-Way Radio Show directly from our website at twowayradioshow.com or hear it almost anywhere you can find a podcast, and you can also subscribe by email. Simply click subscribe by email on the Two-Way Radio Show podcast page at twowayradioshow.com. Enter your email address and you'll get the latest episode of the Two-Way Radio Show as soon as it's released. All right, Danny, I guess it does it for our show in this episode. Before we go, any final comment?
I think we got it.
All right. Well, today's show is sponsored by BuyTwoWayRadios.com. Whether you're searching for two-way radios for general consumer or business use, Buy Two-Way Radios can help you find the best solution for your needs. Enter the promo code SHOW at checkout and save an additional 5% off your order. Give us a call at 1-800-584-1445 or enter our live chat at BuyTwoWayRadios.com. Well, everyone, as always, thanks for listening. And until next time, for the Two-Way Radio Show, I'm Rick Savoya.
And I'm Danny Feemster.
And we're out.